U.S. global leadership on democracy. My guest is already on stage, even before the stage is finished. That is true U.S. leadership.
I just go where I'm told.
How can I now perform in presenting you as you're already sitting there? I mean, there's nothing.
Have a seat.
Not many. Not many words needed. Welcome, John Bolton, former National Security Advisor under Donald Trump. Welcome. We're going to have 20 minutes for Iran, Ukraine, China, Taiwan, and how it is to work with Donald Trump. So that's an easy one, and enough time to include a couple of questions if you use the app. So I'm really trying my best. I'm going to put the iPad here, so feel free to type in your questions, and I'll try to include as many as possible. Mr. Bolton, I guess we have to start with Iran. Right now, although Donald Trump is on his way, almost on his way to China. But I mean, Iran is a topic that you've been always outspoken about. What do you think about the current situation, and what can be a positive outcome?
Well, it's not been clear to me from the outset what Trump's objectives were. He's changed, and he continues to change almost day by day. I've thought for over 2 decades that there will never be peace and security in the Middle East while the regime in Tehran remains in power, and I still think that today. The threat that they pose through their pursuit of nuclear weapons, the terrorist threat that's made itself felt in the Middle East but around the world, and now the palpable willingness to extort the entire global economy by trying to close the Strait of Hormuz tells us that this regime of religious fanatics and militaristic extremists is not a normal regime, and that until the Iranian people get control of their own government, there is no negotiated answer. Now, with respect to where we are now, I think Trump has only 2 choices, neither one of which he will like. One is to resume the military campaign full force and destroy every instrument of Iranian state power that we can, work with the opposition to help them tear apart the regime from within, and I think it's already fractured very badly, and hope that they can persuade enough people to defect, including from the regular military, to bring the regime down.
That includes boots on the ground, in your theory?
No, it includes the Iranians taking control of their own country. What we can do is eliminate the regime's capacity to kill them, which the regime gladly does. The estimates vary, but it's clear at least 40,000 people were killed in January by this regime. It was a sign of their own desperation, I think, of how badly they knew they were. They faced by an almost united opposition among the general public. If Trump isn't willing to do that, I think he has to force the Strait of Hormuz open militarily. Number one, to relieve the pressure on the global economy, although I would keep the blockade on Iran itself to keep pressure on them, and to reestablish deterrence. It's obvious that the regime believes that it can open and close the Strait of Hormuz like a light switch, which, by the way, for any of you who care about international law, is a violation of international law. I'd like to see the great outpouring of outrage about the illegal acts of the Iranian regime. I never hear very much about it, but
violation of international law is not a dimension that is very high valued currently. That's the problem, maybe. Yeah.
No, I mean, I don't think there is much international law. I'm just saying, for all the people who like to criticize the United States for violating it, where's the criticism of Iran? But we have to reestablish deterrence. The Iranians have to know that it's simply not acceptable. And it's very interesting, it's not confirmed yet, but there are press reports that there's a third coalition partner in this war now, that being the United Arab Emirates. And I think that's one of the most positive developments we've seen, a break in what has paralyzed the Middle East since World War II. We have Israel and the United Arab Emirates fighting with the United States on the same side.
Mm-hmm. Now, when we look at Iran, what we see is regime change might have been tried by the US, but not successfully. We still have even a Khamenei in power,
if he's alive.
If he's alive, but still, I mean, just the fact that they can sort of transport the narrative that he's alive is strong enough from the Iranian perspective, isn't it?
Yeah.
Then we have the Strait of Hormuz that was open, now it's closed, and the attempt to encourage the Iranian people to stand up against the regime, which was also not very successful. I mean, wasn't the whole approach towards Iran a bit naive?
No, I just think Trump bumbled it. Look, he didn't make the case to the American people why we were going to use military force beforehand, and I think it's a strong case. Whether his aim was to eliminate the nuclear weapons program, that's another violation of international law for those of you who care. He didn't make the case to Congress. He didn't make the case to the allies, and not just NATO. He didn't make it to the Gulf Arab states. He didn't make it to allies like Japan and South Korea that get much of their oil and gas from the Gulf. And he didn't establish liaison with the opposition inside Iran. But the logic of regime change, I think, remains entirely valid, and it's still possible to save it. I think this regime has been badly fractured. I think it's the instruments of state power have been gravely weakened. There's more to do, and the logical course is to get on with it. And as I say, at a minimum, if you can break the hold on exports of Arab oil and gas through the Strait of Hormuz and relieve the pressure on the international economy, then I think the odds of collapsing the state increase.
Mm. Wildly enough, we haven't even discussed the nuclear deal that is also part of the whole negotiation that needs to be negotiated with Iran.
I think negotiating a nuclear deal with Iran is a waste of oxygen. These people long ago made a strategic decision to get nuclear weapons. There is not a single piece of evidence in 47 years that they've given that strategic objective up. They have pursued it in a variety of ways. They've lied, they've cheated, they've violated every agreement they've signed. They've demonstrated their willingness to do thinking outside the box to get nuclear weapons, including building a replica of the North Korean reactor at Yongbyon in the Syrian desert, fortunately discovered and bombed by the Israelis in September of 2007. And everybody has talked for years about their uranium enrichment capability, ignoring the fact that the spent fuel at the Bushehr reactor, built by the Russians on a Siemens base, has now accumulated by Russia's own statements spent fuel equal to, using calculations from the International Atomic Energy Agency, the ability to manufacture 200 plutonium nuclear weapons. So you can talk about uranium enrichment till the cows come home. It doesn't solve the problem of the plutonium in the spent fuel.
You were a security advisor for Donald Trump in 18 and 19. How can we...
I am Donald Trump's longest-serving national security advisor.
Oh. Is that true, actually? Yeah.
So far.
That's not bad, for 2 years. It's not even. How can we imagine decisions like an invasion of Iran or attacking Iran are actually happening? There's reports that say Pete Hegseth talked him into that decision. Is he someone that let's say, reflects more on those decisions than we would think, or maybe less?
Look, Trump never owns decisions that he thinks are going poorly for him. I foisted any number of things off on him over the years that he didn't like. Some people say Bibi Netanyahu talked him into the decision. I don't think that's true. Netanyahu said the same thing to him in the first term without effect, as did I. So it's whatever convinced him to do this in the second term, it came from his own fertile imagination. I don't understand what it was that convinced him. And I think a large part of the confusion that we see is that he has all but dismantled the National Security Council decision-making structure, which, if it does anything, tries to provide presidents with the information they need to make a decision, gives them options, gives them cost-benefit analysis. I think now decision-making consists of Trump sitting behind his resolute desk in the Oval Office, 5 or 6 people in a semicircle in front of him, and he says, I think we'd like to do X. That's when Pete Hegseth says, yes, sir, we'll do that. That's decision-making.
How has your consulting process with the president happened? I mean, did you know when you enter the Oval Office, okay, now I have 35 seconds to convince him about this or that foreign policy matter? Or how was it happening?
Sometimes it was longer than that. I thought before I took the job that, like every president before him, the gravity of his responsibilities, the weight of the decisions he would have to make in national security matters would provide discipline to his decision making. And it turned out I was just completely wrong about that.
So, and when you assumed that role, and you had an idea of how Donald Trump as a person and as a politician would be, why did you do it? Did you think you were able to change him?
I thought that if we could get him to look at the facts and consider the options, that it would be pretty clear that he would make intelligible decisions, not necessarily ones I would always agree with. That's why presidents get paid the big bucks, but that we would have a process that would help maximize the chances for intelligible decisions. The first week I was there, I started on Monday, April the 9th. On Saturday, the Syrian regime used chemical weapons against its population. By Saturday, excuse me, we're engaged in a trilateral attack on Syria with France and Britain. So in a very condensed period of time, a lot of important decisions were made, and it was clear we didn't have a process that was working. And we struggled through the rest of the time I was there to maximize the chances of getting intelligible decisions. But even when we went through what I would consider a paradigm example of the Brent Scowcroft model of the National Security Council in a decision to retaliate against Iran for destroying one of our drones in international airspace, Trump went through that process, made the decision, and 5 hours later canceled it, and then tweeted about it the next day.
Feels like the two most important parameters for Trump's decisions are news cycle economics and stock market economics.
Well, and the greater glory of Donald Trump.
Which is very closely connected to.
In many respects, yeah. But it is essentially undisciplined.
Yeah. It doesn't give that opportunities to influence him in the right matter. If you know that it's about the stock markets and about the news cycles. We as Europeans had this experience when the Greenland debate was happening, and then all of a sudden the Danish withdraw some funds and the stock markets went down, and all of a sudden there was some sort of leverage in negotiations with Trump. Isn't that something that should be used more for people like you who, or your successors who are negotiating with him?
Well, I think it's a variable with Trump. It's clear he's worried now about the impact on price at the pump of gasoline of what's happened with Middle East production substantially reduced, but not enough to panic about it yet. So it really depends, and I think you have to be careful of any fixed rule with Trump about how his decision-making works.
Let's jump over to his next trip. He's going to China. We just today learned that it's actually a great leader, Xi Jinping, and he is well respected. And so there's no new bromance, or what is happening?
Well, Trump sees international relations as embodied in the relations of heads of state. So if he's friends with Xi Jinping, he thinks that U.S.-China state-to-state relations are in great shape. He calls Xi king. He said at the Osaka G20 meeting when they were having a bilateral, "You're the greatest leader of China since Mao Zedong," which caught everybody a little bit by surprise. But then he said, in fact, "You're the greatest leader in Chinese history." That's how things go. He thinks he's friends with Xi Jinping and with Vladimir Putin, and I will guarantee you that's not how they see Trump. I think they both see him as an easy mark.
I'm going to jump to the questions that you were contributing here. One is asking a short question, but it's interesting because it touches our third very important topic. Is the U.S. able to sacrifice Ukraine, or is it sacrificing Ukraine for peace in Europe?
Well, I think the best thing you can say about Trump and Ukraine at the minute is to hope it doesn't cross his attention span anytime soon. I think the whole way the Ukraine situation has been handled, frankly, since the Russian invasion in 2022 has been mistaken. And I think it's led to the stalemate we have now that Trump would like to resolve so he can get the Nobel Peace Prize, one of his highest objectives. And he doesn't see that developing in that direction, so I think he's standing back from it, which probably from the perspective of continuing Ukraine's ability to defend itself is a good thing.
I think his chances really are lower for the Nobel Peace Prize.
Really? You think?
Yeah, I think so. But he got the FIFA Peace Prize.
That's right. That's right.
Next crisis. What is the current crisis unfolding in Cuba? How does Havana pose a threat to the United States, and what would be a positive outcome? An interesting question, because he might shift focus again.
Well, he might. We also have the first Cuban-American Secretary of State. And I would just remind everybody here, for the United States, Cuba is very different from Iran, from Venezuela, from Ukraine, from everything else. It's 90 miles from our shore. And going back to when Castro took over, it's never been far from people's minds. So how he deals with Cuba is anybody's guess, and I wouldn't want to predict it. But for millions of Cuban Americans, it makes a lot of difference. And it's within cruise line travel from Miami.
I would like to come back to the Ukraine topic, and I'd like to ask you a question that sort of touches the time when you were his security advisor. It feels like there's a personal disappointment of Trump towards Zelensky because of the whole story about Hunter Biden and his role prior to the 2020 elections. Is this actually the personal thing that stands in the way of supporting Ukraine in the way the country would have deserved it?
Well, as I said, this is a matter of personal relations. And Trump believes that Ukraine worked against him in the 2016 campaign. And that Hillary Clinton's computer server, is somewhere in Ukraine. And he wants it. And he's serious. He wants that server, which would prove it. Zelensky hasn't produced the server. It resulted in cutoff of U.S. security assistance in 2018 for a time. That's how Trump sees things. His analysis of Ukraine is not what's in America's national security interest. It's about that problem. And Putin has played on that repeatedly in belittling Zelensky. He has passed Russian propaganda through to Steve Witkoff, who has in turn passed it to Trump, who said it publicly. This is not anything about compromising material that the Kremlin has on Trump. It's about Putin's ability to read Trump's weaknesses and to exploit them.
One of the things that I have never really understood is, okay, Trump's position on Russia, fine. But your Republican Party has always been more than clear about its position against Russia. How can it be that, such a large part of congressional politicians, Senate members of the House, fell for Trump's position?
Well, I don't think they agree with it. I think they're just intimidated. They're unwilling to speak out against it. I think the party fundamentally remains a Reaganite or Reagan-Bush party on foreign policy, and I think when Trump leaves office, that will be clear. I think there's going to be a fight for the soul of the party, but I think the Reagan wing is going to win.
Isn't that fascinating that so many people don't?
It's terrible.
Yeah.
That we have to go through this.
Because to me, it's also fascinating, people like you work with Trump, then they leave the government, and then they become very outspoken. There's many of these people who worked with him and then become very outspoken. So I'm wondering, what kind of play is it that we're watching when we look at Washington, D.C.?
Well, I think Trump is an aberration, and I think he has faced 3 very weak Democratic opponents, and he's been able to beat 2 of them. But I think the majority that elected Trump is unique to Trump. Nobody else can hold it together.
John Bolton, thank you very much.
Thank you
for your remarks.
Thank you.